Hello, welcome back to my channel, my very, very quiet channel. I felt like this was a good moment to test out a new background because I've taken such a big break, I might as well come back with a bit of a fresh perspective. I don't exactly know if it's working. It's very plain, it's very sparse, but I really want to show off my pin collection. Usually at the beginning of a video like this, I will, or any YouTuber, I guess, will give some sort of indication of why they haven't been uploading. In this case, I think I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but I will, I guess, give you a little context. Writing's been a struggle. I'll just say that. There are so many reasons why it's been a struggle, but I think the one that is most apparent to me that's been problematic recently has been a huge issue that I've been struggling with in regards to self-confidence, just in general. Blanket issue with me. It's been an issue my entire life in various aspects of my life. I think it's something a lot of creative people in general, a lot of people who consider themselves artists of some sort, can relate to. It's something I'm working on actively right now, and it's something that is also really affecting my writing in a way that it's never affected me before. It's been difficult sometimes to feel like I can legitimately call myself a writer if it's been a while since I've actually successfully written something that I actually think is decent and actually want to keep. So I have been thinking a lot about how to take a step back, trying to focus a little bit less on banging my head against a screen and trying to focus a little bit more on other aspects of my relationship with writing and my relationship with stories as a whole. And one of those things has been reading. My relationship with reading has been up and down throughout my life. I studied literature in university, and going into university I was super pumped, and then at the other end I was kind of burnt out and had a lot of trouble reading, had a lot of trouble picking what to read. And then once I kind of got my reading back, you know, sort of on track, I started this thing where I would pick books based on either I'd been recommended them a lot on YouTube or on Instagram, or I thought they would be a good comp title or something that would help me with whatever I was writing. And none of those things are bad. That actually led me to some great books in some cases, but I think I was starting to lose my excitement for the things that I was picking up. I decided that I was going to try to just change it up a little bit and read stuff that maybe I wouldn't normally put at the top of my TBR. And I've read so many good books the past year. I think I have read more things in the past year or a year and a half-ish that I've genuinely loved and wanted to recommend to people and wanted to talk about. And that's not to say that I didn't love some of the stuff that I was reading before, but I just think I've had a lot better success rate in the past year in terms of picking up things that I genuinely have enjoyed. So what I thought would be kind of a nice soft launch back into making videos, because like I said, I'm not completely back to where I want to be with my writing, but I'm better today than I was last month or the month before. And what I really want to talk about today are two series that I think have directly contributed to this improvement and have directly inspired me in some way, shape, or form in my relationship with stories and in my relationship with writing. That's not to say that these are the two best series that I've read in the past year. They are among the best, but they share that platform with some other stories as well. It's just that these two, I can directly see how they have put me in a better place and have, you know, helped me climb a couple stairs towards the place that I want to get to again. And they're both series, which for me is a big deal because it's been a long time since I have started a series and actually been genuinely burning to finish that series right away. I need book 2 right after I finish book 1, and if there's a book 3, I need book 3 right after I finish book 2. That's been hard for me recently. I've been really reaching for standalones and duologies a lot more than I have series. Granted, the first one is a duology, but there's a third book, a prequel, so 3 books now. So I'm gonna put down my tea for a second and I'm gonna get the first book. Fable. So this one is different in so many ways. It was one of the first ones I picked up that was a little bit random. I think I discovered it in stores before I even discovered it on social media. Look at this cover. You might also notice that I have red hair again. Purple was really fun, but it was too much trouble to keep up. So I've gone back orange for now, or copper, or whatever you want to call this. I love a red-haired female protagonist. I don't know why. I love the stereotypes that come along with that usually, of being kind of headstrong and stubborn and maybe a little bit fiery tempered. I love it. So this one I saw and instantly was captivated by the cover. Then I think I might have found the author on social media or found people recommending it, because it is recommended, but it's not the most hyped book of the decade or something. It's a fantasy, but it's not as fantastical as most of the fantasy that I tend to read. The themes are a little bit more subtle in the book. And what I didn't even realize when I picked it up and decided to read it was that it also has a very important plot theme of gemstones. Funny thing is that my current work in progress, which I started and had brainstormed and world built a lot of stuff for before I ever even heard of this book, it has a lot to do with gemstones. It's basically centered around gemstones. That was my first idea, and I'm calling it right now my gemstone book before I figure out what I actually want to call it for a working title. So very serendipitous that this would happen to revolve so heavily around gemstones. And the way that they work in this book is different from my work in progress. Thankfully, I'd already plotted quite a bit, not plotted, but brainstormed and world built on how I kind of wanted my gemstones to work. And it is very different from this book, so I could actually go into this with a pretty free mind and not have to worry too much about, you know, being influenced accidentally. I loved this book. The writing style resonated really well with me. It has a kind of, I guess, ship seafaring, pirate-esque, not really pirates, but yeah, very much revolved around the sea and water, which is not a theme that is like an instant win for me. It's never been something that I've gravitated towards in particular. It's not something I dislike either, but it's just not something that's an instant win for me. But this actually has gotten me started on a kick where I want to read everything that has to do with pirates or sea or even ships. As soon as I finished this book, of course, I had to read the second book. It is a duology. Look at this. I mean, is this not the most beautiful? I can't even. And then at the end of last year, Adrienne Young released this prequel, which does not have to do with the main character. It is before her time slightly, but I still wanted to read it and I still really enjoyed it, even if I still really like these books better. But these were all really good, and it was, I think, officially the first series where I read the first book and instantly wanted the second book. And I also rented it originally from the library, and I ran right out and bought this one and the second one, and then when this one came out I bought it as well because I wanted to own it. I wanted it on my shelf. Who would not want these beautiful covers on their shelf? I think this just really proved to me that, first of all, I still love stories, which is a very good thing when you're kind of down and feeling not self-confident, not legitimate in a writer or a storyteller of any sort, and you're just kind of doubting yourself and your relationship with stories. I think it's good to find those reminders that actually I still really love stories. I still want to do this. I still want to create something that affects people as much as this has affected me, and it's still possible for me to get affected by this. So that really reinforced that to me. It also reinforced that I can find some really good books by happenstance. It doesn't have to be something that's popular or that's recommended to me, and it actually got me to read a series from the beginning to the end and be genuinely excited by it. So that's the first series. The other series I want to talk about in this video might seem a little bit more obvious for fantasy lovers because it is a very, very hyped author and series. But for me, it's maybe not the most obvious pick because, well, firstly, it's adult fantasy, and I've been reading a lot of YA fantasy because I've been writing YA fantasy, and like I said, I've been picking out books that I can directly link to my writing. So when I decided I'm gonna read stuff that's maybe a little bit, you know, branching out for me, I thought, okay, now is the time. I'm gonna read Brandon Sanderson. I think I might have mentioned Brandon Sanderson on this channel before because I have been watching his writing advice for several years now. I've watched all of his classes, and there's just something about the way that he talks about writing and approaches writing that is really helpful for me. That did mean that I had not high expectations, but I guess a lot of nervousness going into Mistborn, which was where I started, and I think that's the general consensus of a good place to start with Brandon Sanderson. I was really nervous that I wasn't gonna like it. That doesn't mean that I couldn't still enjoy his advice, but inevitably it probably would taint it a little bit because if I really didn't like it and I had concrete reasons why I didn't like it, I'd be constantly thinking about those every time I, you know, watched a video of him. But I decided I need to do it, and maybe I will actually like them. So I picked up the first Mistborn book, The Final Empire, and yes, I have the UK covers, which are beautiful, so I couldn't help it. I like them much better than the US covers. So I bought the whole set, a little bit dangerous for me, but I decided to buy them anyway, and I had to order them because they are not sold in the US, so I decided just to order the whole set and take a chance. I'm so glad I took that chance because I was just swept away by this story. It's a massive, well, massive. It's massive for me. It's a pretty chunky book, and the next two, well, the middle one especially, is even chunkier than the first book. And I've read the first, the second, and I have started the third. I'm a couple hundred pages in, which is not even halfway. It has blown me away in a way that I didn't quite expect. I hoped I would love it. I kind of expected to at least enjoy it, partly based on his advice, partly based on hype, but I didn't expect to like it to the extent that I do like it. I expected the magic system to be cool because I'd watched videos talking about the magic system. I knew it was going to be cool. I already liked it. So seeing it come to life in the actual story was really, really cool. But I knew that it had action and a little bit of a heist in the first book and stuff like that, which I genuinely love. But it also has, you know, politics and battle scenes, which can be really cool, but can also be very flat to me and uninteresting. And I knew it was going to be very plot driven, not necessarily as character driven, and I like a little bit of a balance between those two. I generally don't like stuff that's super character driven to where I feel like there's barely any plot, but I also don't like stuff that's plot, 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 and you feel like you don't really have time to marinate in the feelings with the characters a little bit. I like a balance. So I thought it would be maybe a little bit too plot heavy for me. However, what this series ended up doing was bringing me back to my roots with fantasy. Because from the beginning of my writing, I have always written fantasy. I wrote some mystery, like Nancy Drew inspired, when I was younger as well, but I've always gravitated towards fantasy, epic fantasy, high fantasy, a lot of times in a slightly historical setting, either medieval fantasy or something else that's at least a little bit in history. But lately I really haven't been reading that many books that fit this very, I guess, stereotypical fantasy vibe. And I've not gone back to my roots in a way that I did with this series. And I'm gonna pause here because my battery is dying. I'm so unprofessional, I've forgotten how to vlog. I started with half a battery. All right, I hope this framing is at least similar what I had before. I'll remember how to do this at one point. So this brought me back to my roots with fantasy in so many ways. Another thing this series did for me was something I really didn't expect, and that is to kind of unlock a new perspective on prose. Brandon Sanderson is kind of famous in a way for very straightforward, very simple, even bland, I put that in quotation marks because that's very subjective, but very basic prose. His writing is very to the point, and I know a lot of people have complained about this, a lot of people don't like this, a lot of people love it and have praised it, but I thought, based on the stuff that I've typically liked to read, based on my background studying creative writing in college, I thought this was going to be something that was going to drive me up the wall and that possibly would make me stop reading the series, because it has for series in the past. I have gotten annoyed with the prose enough to actually want to not read the second book. So I was a little scared. And actually, what it did was show me how well this can work. Brandon Sanderson knows how to tell a story, and he just sits down and tells the damn story. And he does it really well. His pacing worked really well for me. The plot was interesting. The characters were dynamic, even though it wasn't character driven. It was very much plot driven, but the characters were still interesting. And I never thought that I would read a book where I can look at the prose, and if I really study it, I think, personally, this is my opinion, the prose is not good. It's not pretty prose, it's not nice prose. And yet, when you're reading the story, if you allow yourself just to get into it, you will see that he's using very simple, very bland, or even bad, if you want to use that word, constructions and approaches to the language to actually still paint a really good picture. You understand the characters' emotions, you understand the setting where they are, you understand everything. It's just maybe the way of getting to that understanding isn't also elegant and pretty. I wasn't even paying attention to the prose anymore. I was just reading the story. And that's his point, I think, with why he approaches writing like that. And it's not something I want to do personally. When I say that it unlocked something for me in terms of how I approach prose, that's not to say that I want to write like that. In reading this and realizing that, I think one of the more extreme examples of straightforward writing can actually work for me and other people, lots of other people. But in my personal journey, what was important was that it can work for me, which means that maybe I need to be a little bit less of a stickler when it comes to my prose. It's another thing that I struggle with when writing in terms of the pace that I write, because I do get really wrapped up in the phrases and the sentence structure and writing really nice prose, and that is still important to me, but it's definitely taught me a little bit more balance and given me a bit more of a balanced approach to my own writing. One more thing I want to add that I didn't explicitly say in this video is that plotting and pacing and all these story elements are definitely something that I have been self-conscious about in my own writing. So seeing it done so well, and also seeing it done in a way that was completely different from how I typically do it in terms of prose and in terms of writing style, was very refreshing to me, and I also think very educational, honestly, for me to see it done that well, and kind of reminded me that that's something that I need to focus on and maybe stop focusing so much on prose, or at least put it on the back burner, and focus a lot more on those other super important story elements. So maybe this is something I will explore in a future writing vlog. With all of that said, I'm going to finish my tea now, and probably read a chapter or two of Hero of Ages. I don't know when I'm going to upload another writing vlog, but it probably will be a writing vlog that you'll see on this channel next. So if you want to see that whenever I can get that filmed and edited, definitely make sure you're subscribed to my channel and you hit the little notification bell so you get a notification when I do finally upload. In the meantime, if you want to keep up with what I'm reading, my thoughts on Sanderson's third Mistborn book or anything else, definitely follow me on Instagram. I hope that this video has been helpful for you in some way or interesting. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read either of these series, if you liked them, if you didn't like them. If you want, you can also leave me in the comments below a book series that maybe has had a similar impact on you, either on your relationship with reading or with writing or stories. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are enjoying whatever you're reading right now. I hope your writing projects are going well, and I will talk to you very soon in another video. And I'll charge my camera next time, I promise. Maybe.